Oh, hey, hi, how are you? Dan Stein here. I'm sitting at my desk. And thanks for joining me during this Talkback Live. And the first thing I want to say is thank you. I want to thank you to the hundreds, indeed thousands of you who provided feedback on our questionnaire and surveys on what you'd like to see FAIR do more of, what's working, what's not working. Here's my office. See, I'm in my office here. All right, yeah, Caitlin. And I'll be walking around and we'll be talking to some folks to talk a little bit about what we do here at FAIR. But I just first of all want to say thank you because your input was fabulous. There's no doubt about it. FAIR members and activists are engaged on this issue in ways that I never really imagined. Now, FAIR's been at this almost 40 years, and I can tell you that never before have I seen the level of interest and knowledge that we see today among Americans who are concerned about the immigration issue. This is an amazing thing to see because truly all of us do believe that this is a national crisis that's emerged. We're seeing in places like California now and Colorado and New York and other states a party of nullification. Many remember their history that before the Civil War, the Democratic Party favored nullification in order to try to advance the cause of slavery. Democrats were working to protect their source of cheap labor, slavery. And here we go, 2017. What do we see now? Democrats trying to protect a source of cheap labor, a form of modern-day indenture. The use of unauthorized and illegal labor is really a modern form of slavery. People who are working here without normal legal rights. Why would anyone want to protect an institution like this? But indeed, what these sanctuary cities are doing are creating a true civil crisis. And we certainly applaud what Jeff Sessions has done and finally, taken the bull by the horns and sued California. Many people remember that FAIR worked very hard to try to get Arizona to pass a law, SB 1070. And all that law did was ask Arizona to help ensure there were resources that were committed to identify people illegally in the country, turn them over to ICE for identification and removal proceedings. And that was preempted, according to Judge Bolton in the Ninth Circuit. And that was, frankly, pretty, small potatoes compared to what California is doing today. Obstruction of justice, alerting people here illegally, people with criminal warrants, people who'd committed felonies, probable ICE enforcement, giving them the heads up and allowing them basically to take cover and abscond. This is clearly felony harboring under federal law, and Jeff Sessions deserves the gratitude of all Americans for what he's done. FAIR's been warning about sanctuary issues for a long time. In 1985, when the Reverend John Fife, who thought he was very well-meaning, started the sanctuary movement, ultimately that movement produced MS-13 in this country, which is now metastasized all across the country. But the most important thing, I think, to understand here is that you all are aware. You all are aware that this is what's going on because you really gave me some excellent feedback on things that you want, and I want to run through some of the things that you asked for. You want more hard data. You want more hard data, specifics, and pithy data. FAIR can provide that to you. We have an abundance of resources, and we probably can do a better job packaging those for your use and information as you talk to your friends and colleagues and family. Many of you are asking about the validity of our statistics. We'll talk about the source of our statistics with Matt O'Brien in a few minutes. You're looking for some understanding of why polling data is so varied. Why is it that polling data seems to show 1 minute that people want control of our borders and the next minute they all want amnesty? We can drill into that a little bit later. You're looking for more cost and crime data. FAIR has excellent cost data and crime data on the website. State-by-state analysis of crime data is hard to get, but certainly state-by-state cost data is available. You want to see better graphics, more graphics. Graphics are good. All this is against the backdrop, by the way, of you saying 90% of you that you feel that FAIR is doing a good or excellent job. So this is refinement as far as I'm concerned, but nevertheless, in the motto of Lego Industries, good is never the best. The motto is the best is never good enough. And that's my motto. That's the way we run things in FAIR. You want to see more data on the impact on immigration, on population growth and consumption. You want to know what our solutions are, what FAIR's immigration framework is. And of course, that's available on our website, but it does include moving us to packet migration. If you admit an alien for some particular purpose that serves the national interest, they can bring spouse, unmarried, minor children. Interior enforcement, E-Verify, summary removal proceedings, streamlining the process, presumption of deportability, which has to be rebutted by the alien and deportation proceedings, adequately enforcing immigration judges. Naturally, we have to have document reform, stop the fraud and abuse. We'll talk more about that too, not necessarily today, but in the future. You want to hear more about European immigration issues? We try to post certain things on our website about what's happening in Europe. I think everybody knows that they've basically digested a tremendous amount of immigration, much of it from the Middle East, causing enormous problems with assimilation and crime. We try to report on that on our Twitter feed. If you're on our Twitter feed, you'll see lots of articles dealing with what's happening in the EU. You'd like more granular data on DACA statistics. We provided some of those things, but we can certainly give you more. And you're looking for good information on refugees. Things that you seem to really like. And again, this is a consensus. You like our quizzes. We've got a new quiz coming up that we're going to be promoting nationally that I think you'll like. And most importantly, these quizzes are very important in helping to reach young people, millennials and others that are being propagandized by the rigid and intolerant radical left that's taken over American college campuses. So we're looking at that. And you also want more informational videos. And fortunately, FAIR has in-house the ability to actually develop strong informational videos. We've been doing a lot of online advertising this year, and we plan to do quite a bit more. But factual and informational videos are also useful, pithy, and effective. While I'm at it, I'm going to walk over here for a second. Recommend this new book that just came out on Amazon. If you can see it, it's called Immigration Fraud. Needs to be backwards on this. Immigration Fraud, Fixing Loopholes in Immigration Law. It's on Amazon. You see the cover. It talks about chain migration. It's written by B.R. Conda. So you might want to take a look at that if you get a chance. Going back here to legislation you're particularly interested in, there's certainly a lot of interest in voter ID and voter fraud. Kudos to Chris Kobach, who's out there working with Steve Camarota to try to salvage Kansas's voter verification law. Voter fraud is a problem, and you have to give your hat off to Chris Kobach, who's of counsel to our affiliated organization, the Immigration Reform Law Institute, or IRLI, which works closely with Judicial Watch and other organizations in a litigation strategy. Many of you asked about Judicial Watch. You'll be happy to know that a number of the attorneys here at our Immigration Reform Law Institute are actually people who came from Judicial Watch. So we have an excellent relationship, leveraging your commitment, your philanthropy with Judicial Watch and other organizations working on the legal end of this. Many of you are concerned about state bills. We'll talk about that in a bit. About the sneaky last-minute legislation that gets stuck into these must-pass funding bills. This is a huge problem. I think we all know that the Senate is a very, very difficult place right now, and that these last-minute little squeakers they put in are very destructive. In fact, anybody who saw what happened with the Senate debate a few weeks ago, contemplating the possibility of what was called the Schumer-Rounds-Collins amendment, would have been catastrophic. A truly disastrous, not only for the numbers of immigrants coming over the next 10 years, but also taking a look at it from the standpoint of whether it was good governance and whether the Department of Homeland Security could actually do its job. And you're also very interested in E-Verify, which of course is an important piece of legislation if we're ever going to stop the system of illegal immigration and employment. And I'm really proud of all of you because you seem to really be on top of some of the most extraordinary issues of our time. This kind of awareness, by the way, the kind of awareness you're showing for the range of issues you're concerned about, while it's daunting, and it also shows that we have a lot of challenges to meet in terms of addressing all these different issues, it also demonstrates that there's just an awareness level that we simply did not see before that's translating into a real political earthquake in the United States. Some of the issues you'd like to also see addressed are 14th Amendment or birthright citizenship. Now, there's a lot of discussion about the Goodlatte bill in the House. What seems to be holding it up from going to the floor, in addition to it having an amnesty, which we don't support, is that agriculture is still not satisfied with the large-scale guest worker program that was included in that bill. Going back over 35 years, if I look at one of the big mistakes that FAIR probably has made, It's been the inability to make agriculture find an alternative way of recruiting labor to harvest crops or move to automation. We need to put more pressure on agriculture because the Americans are paying an enormous price for the labor recruitment mechanisms that agriculture is using and continues to persist in using. The idea that agriculture would hold up all of Trump's or many of Trump's major initiatives is an example of how, in 1986, they got the Seasonal Agricultural Worker Amnesty Program. Over 1 million people. Agriculture sees no obligation to hang on to its workers, believing it has some kind of constitutional right to a steady stream of unauthorized aliens coming in to do work. They've had plenty of time to figure out how to get these jobs filled by Americans doing seasonal work, and they just don't have the incentive. Obviously, folks don't like, as Christie says, DACA amnesty, and of course, FAIR does not support that. Naturally, people are upset because Trump ran on a platform of opposing amnesty. They don't understand why he offered $2 million in his new framework as a starting position with the Democrats. Didn't get him anywhere. The Democrats didn't budge an inch anyway. But again, it sort of discouraged the base. So a lot of people are wondering what the point of that was. Chain migration is a big interest to you, and I take that as a point of personal privilege that this level of awareness, which FAIR has helped to promote, has come to the fore of your awareness on the issue. Chain migration is a huge, huge problem. But until Donald Trump raised this issue nationally, it was very difficult to get the public to focus on the actual phenomenon of the multiplier effect of chain migration. So this is a very fabulous development. You'll be glad to know that FAIR is launching a major digital campaign in the next week over on chain migration to help Americans, all Americans, understand exactly what the problem is, why you can't give an amnesty. In addition to rewarding lawbreakers and treating lawbreakers better than people who played by the rules and drawing a line in the sand that makes no sense, you also have the problem of incentivizing future illegal immigration, as well as all the chain migration phenomena of them wanting to bring all their relatives. So, the issues you're looking at also, foreign students, the FOPT and H-1B bridge. This is very important. A bridge that basically has displaced many Americans and is certainly harming millennials more than any other group right now. So this is very, very important. Visa overstays you're concerned about. Illegal voting, as I mentioned earlier. Law licenses. Why are illegal aliens getting law licenses in places like California? Don't they have an obligation to uphold the federal scheme? I agree with you. I agree with you, Beth. They do have an obligation. Agriculture has an obligation to automate. And frankly, our relationship with Mexico has been unfortunate because it really has forestalled the automation that should have taken place in agriculture. Marriage fraud is a big issue. They're talking about the Violence Against Women Act. Clearly an important bill, but unfortunately has also been used for a lot of immigration fraud. And you're concerned about ID fraud and theft. Those are the major issues you raised. Many of you are wondering why it is we can't just enforce the law. Why can't Trump just use the laws we have now? And frankly, as I mentioned before, we have very strong laws on the book, and in many cases, if the Trump administration just goes out and aggressively does what they're doing, that can actually help bring some kind of law and order back to the process. Already there's a strong law in place. The price that the Democrats and some Republicans like Jeff Flake and Lindsey Graham and John McCain and some others that are in the pockets of big business multinationals is significant, but Trump does have the power and authority to do amazing things. It's really important to realize that after all these decades of watching the situation deteriorate, when FAIR was founded, the world population was about 3 billion people. 4.5 billion people. Today it's 7.5 billion people. We've actually added 3 billion people to the population of the planet. How do you define winning, of course, is always subjective. But in the end, many of these defensive battles that we've won, like defeating the Schumer-Collins Rounds Amendment, is an example of a victory that we've had by preventing the lid being blown off, if you will, future immigration. The fact that we've been able to sustain immigration levels at around 1 million a year in the face of this incredible increase in migration pressure from all over the world is a victory in and of itself and should not be underestimated as a significant achievement for this movement. You're interested in filing lawsuits. Of course, we talk about Early and what they do. They're litigating all across the country, intervening in lawsuits as well as providing advisory briefs everywhere they can with the Trump administration's defending the Trump administration's initiatives, as well as trying to find satisfactory plaintiffs to try to test the legality of illegal actions. We're certainly willing to and able to help the Department of Justice in its suit against California, which, by the way, California has retained the services of Eric Holder, who's over at Covington and Burling, who's spending all his time in post-Obama years continuing his effort to try to destroy U.S. immigration controls. The big question, of course, here is what's the best way to fight back? And in the end, this movement is really a story of David and Goliath. If you think about the multinationals, George Soros, the billions of dollars, the entire Democratic Party at this point, which now is name-calling Jeff Sessions in completely unsatisfactory ways. If you take a look at the power structure and what's involved in trying to promote immigration now, for many, many reasons, the globalists, the internationalization of trade, it is remarkable what the American people have done with a few small organizations like FAIR to hold back the tide. So we are doing things, you are doing things, we are making progress. We have a strong administration that's speaking up for issues that haven't been discussed in years and actually bringing this issue to a political head in 2018. Targeting social media was one of your suggestions. Of course, we've grown our social media platform now to 1.7 million Facebook followers, almost 160,000 Twitter followers, major virality, great engagement on our work now, achieving more penetration in the public, so awareness now than even if you publish in some of the major online magazines, because we built it so strongly. This has been an important part of our raising public awareness, and it's there. I mean, people are engaged and involved, using our phone to action capabilities. They're making their voices heard. You all have some great suggestions on featuring displaced employers in videos as well as victims. In 2017, we produced a number of videos involving displaced Americans, and we plan to continue to do those in the future. And you also recommended shaming and naming businesses that hire illegal workers. Excellent idea. I mean, when I think about an awful lot of what's happening in this country today and how so few people who ought to be in jail are not in jail for routinely hiring illegal labor over many years, now we see state officials and local officials who ought to be in jail for obstructing justice. You would wonder why it is we're having such a, we have to even be fighting these battles now when you think so many of the people in this country support what we're trying to do. I'm going to go down the hall right now. I'm walking down the hall. I'm going to talk to Matt O'Brien for a minute, who's our director of research, if he's in his office, and he's expecting me, so he should be. Talk just a little bit for him about the question of statistics and how we source them. So I want to run around here with Matt. Matt's over here with me. Let's see if I can get him on there. All right, come down here.
How you doing?
Fine. So anyway, one of our great followers wanted to know just a little bit about our statistics. Where do we get our statistics? How do we validate them?
Sure. So we do essentially the same thing that universities and large think tanks like the Heritage Foundation do. We engage in academic research. We take a look at the reports that are produced by the Government Accountability Office, Inspector General's offices, and other research organizations like Pew Research. And then what we do is we try and find other sources that we can correlate those against. Now, sometimes that means there's a settled figure that we can take, but in other cases it means that we have to look for a best estimate. And we do that by using various statistical methods to average these things out and figure out, based on the available data, what the best estimate is.
Bottom line is you can rely on FAIR's data.
Without a doubt, we have a great research staff that's very skilled in analytical methods, and we rigorously apply those to produce good results for the people who are looking at our information.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Now let's walk over and talk to Spencer. I'm being kind of peripatetic here. Fortunately, these offices are not that far apart, and here is Spencer Raley, who's our research associate. And Spencer, thanks for joining me for a minute.
Yeah, hey everybody.
So Spencer has some pithy data that he's working on. He's going to tell you about. We're packaging for your use to talk to friends and activists and for your local speeches.
So yeah, we get a lot of questions from activists like you every day, just requesting certain statistics that y'all need out on the field. So what we decided to do is take all the most popular, most commonly requested statistics and put it all into one place. That way whenever you have a question, whenever you need to vet a fact or a number that someone told you, you can just go to our what we call our quick reference guide and just see what the truth is, see what the actual number is.
Well, we've got some good ideas on how to disseminate that. All right, thanks, Spencer.
All right, take care.
All right, let's go down and talk to Joe Gomez, who's our press secretary. Got to whip around here. It's going to take me a second. Even at my age, sometimes I got to run. Not so easy. But I'm having a good time. Got some folks working in our office today. Here's Joe. Joe's press secretary. Can you see him? There he is. Joe, tell us a little bit about how we get the word out to the media.
Well, there's a lot of ways that we try to, get the word out. We do it on radio. We do it over Facebook Live here. Right now I'm working on a story kind of talking about the DOJ taking on California, posting that on the immigrationreform.com blog. We also issue press releases. As you can see here, that's one we released talking about the government shutdown that happened earlier. So there's plenty that goes on in this department, and we're always working and coming up with new ideas and strategizing and trying to figure out the best way to get our message across.
Thanks, Joe. And one last person we're going to talk to, and you'll be interested in this, I'm sure, what Sherry Rendall has to say about what's happening on the state and local issue. And here's Sherry. We're going to talk to her for a minute.
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
Good.
So sprung this on you at the last minute.
Absolutely.
Delayed on you there. Okay, so tell us what state and local is working on right now. This is going to really make your blood boil.
Well, absolutely. It's our height of our legislative session, and so about 43 states are in session. But what just happened in Oregon is just before their session ended, the legislature rushed an amendment onto a bill that would provide driver's licenses for illegal aliens. And what is so pernicious
So this
about
is an
this,
attempt to just overt effort to overrule the will of the voters.
absolutely, they just passed in 2014 a measure
So this,
that would
this issue really is the elites versus the people, right?
It is.
Elites
It
versus
is.
the people.
And not only that, they put it as so-called emergency legislation, so it goes into effect immediately, as opposed to allowing a referendum on this.
What else are we working on?
We're working on a lot of states' anti-sanctuary bills. We were just in Tennessee testifying on their anti-sanctuary legislation. The committee should vote next week on that, and then it'll go to the Senate floor and onto the House. We're working with Ohio on anti-sanctuary legislation. In Maryland, we're going to be fighting a sanctuary bill. It's substantially similar to the bill that died last year. And we have a bunch of activists that'll be testifying. FAIR will be testifying. We have a couple of sheriffs that we know will be there as well. So we work with law enforcement, and they're geared up against the sanctuary bills.
So our local groups, people who form local groups, are an important part of our effort. If you want to form local groups, get in touch with our field staff. We can help you do that. Local groups are making a big difference, as we see in Oregon, as we see all across the country. FAIR is working hard to try to get another ballot initiative on in Oregon, as well as in Florida right now on E-Verify. So there are things for you to do. If you want to get more active, there are things you can do. In the end, thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
It only happens with your help, and it only happens with your engagement. FAIR is only as good as our activist base and the engaged people who learn about the issue all across the country. And I'm extremely proud of the things that you're doing, the feedback you're providing, hearing your voices. And I want you to know that I appreciate you taking the time to do that. This is our lobby here. As you can see, we are together here with our Law Institute, Immigration Reform Law Institute. And with that,